Network segmentation or network segregation? That's the question. If you ask me, I would go for network segregation because that is more ultimate in terms of really configure the network into separate parts. Network segmentation is more defining areas, and it's more, I would say it's more like a flagging or identifying certain logical parts of the network, but segregation is the real security approach where you say, I want to have trust boundaries between these segregated network parts, and that allows me to protect it better in layers. Um, what else does it help me to do? Controlling traffic. I could say control traffic, but I rather stick to the word controlling because you on the one side can make sure that you're not having the wrong traffic coming in, but you can also use it a bit of a load balancing approach and route the traffic according to your thresholds properly. And especially then the segregation makes sense because you have then, I mean, yes, everyone is using cloud and everyone thinks performance is not a problem. When you see the bill, you would know that sometimes you should scale dynamically into segregated parts. But again, there's a security aspect to it, so therefore it's not all about how many resources I assign to a certain network area. Restricted access, just mentioned, and always underestimated the logging and monitoring part, and of course also using these logs and not just monitor but also analyze and compare and say what happens in this area of the network, what happens there, is there a certain pattern, is there someone trying something funky here and then trying it there again. That makes also forensic a lot whole of easier afterwards when something happened or about to happen. And I mean, drastic cases here is network isolation, so that's good. You can contain a part of the network in case something went wrong. Much easier to operationalize. Of course, you can configure everything also in logical areas, but if you really want to make sure and if you really want to shut down something, or let's say if you want to recover from an attack and sometimes you have to wipe the whole environment, trust me, if your network is split into pieces and you know which puzzle pieces will have been affected, you just have to replace those. It saves a lot of work. No one wants a cloud room with 20,000 resources, and later no one even knows which resource is in use, and you have to install a lot of other tools to figure it out for you. If you segregate the network, you can have also more micromanaged ownership. So, say this is part of the application, this is part of the infrastructure or the platform as a service. Much easier to identify the ownership in case issues happen or something has to be resolved. Another term here, air gapping, may be worth explaining separately, but in basic is just basic explanation is just literally what it says. There's an air gap in between the networks, which allow a layer of protection, and also additional room for trust boundaries. Comparing this with the ship flooding compartments, I think I mentioned that in the context of the DMZ before, but I mean DMZ, demilitarized zone, is part of network segregation as well, but it's only one component, which is more like the landing area. Here we talk about the entire network. It could be that the treasure box, so let's say the area where you have the most critical applications running, and it's only authorized for very few, for the top management, or even your security stuff is there, or you can segregate it totally from the other network so that not even accidentally or by any overriding of access control or rights, someone may accidentally get access. It literally does not exist when you scan the other network. So it's like a hidden, like a panic room. But again, coming back to ship flooding compartment. So yes, when your ship, not quoting the Titanic, who got a big scratch on the side, but let's say a normal ship accident, one hole in the wall, shutter go down, that compartment is filled with water, but the water is contained, and literally there's a second skin inside the ship that protects the rest. from flooding and keeps the ship afloat. So the same here. The more you segregate, the more compartments you have, the more you can react on damages. So if 3 compartments are broken, you still have maybe 5 more. If you would have not split it into 8 in the first place, you may have lost half. Yeah. Now you only lost 3 out of 8. If you would have split it into 4 only, you may have lost 50%. So that's the whole idea. How much recovery is required, how much extra work is coming up out of this whole thing if you're not segregated properly. How to do it? Yes, there are fancy tools and everything can be automated and whatnot, but sometimes simple is good. So ideally, visualize your network. I know when you have a big company, it's a big network, but try in layers, try high level, and say, I want to have a separate segregation from the headquarter, from other branches, for example. Or I want a geographical segregation by country, or I want a business related segregation because of different business lines that shouldn't cross each other. One is more sensitive, is maybe R&D, or you have different business lines, consumer products, and you have corporate clients which are very sensitive, because there's a lot of information going into these contracts. So you can segregate even that, so that basically data from different legal entities, from different geographical locations, from different business lines or different groups of users is all segregated, and literally they don't know of the other one's existence when they purely look at the infrastructure. Ownership is then a great thing, because the smaller the segregation packages, the more you can assign ownership end to end. Well, you may lose a little bit on scalability, because some cross services, let's say infrastructural maintenance and patching, cannot be fully executed across the board. But again, if they're not fully automated or native in the cloud, it's manual effort, and you cannot have an infinite big team handling the whole network at all times. And you may have to compromise, because you may decide and say, well, this patch we apply only on the critical area, and for the other areas we give it a pass, and next time we will catch up, so that we don't have so much downtime, because maybe the public, or let's say the data that is more for public use, their availability is the big driver. The data that is more secret and strictly confidential, downtime is okay, but security is priority. So in the CIA triad, which we have explained in another video, so confidentiality rules for the one, availability rules for the other, and you can design different patching strategies for this, and according to your downtimes. And of course, ultimately, when you perform network audit or network testing, the scans run much faster. You can run them simultaneously. Yes, you may end up paying additional licenses for the scanning tools, because you have different areas to scan and you want to do it in parallel. But again, well invested money, because you can scan faster, more frequent, you can rescan, you can react faster on the scan results, and not just say, well, I saved money because I scanned the whole week, now I have them all, but what happened on Monday is on Friday already obsolete. So you may want to think of that. And again, with segregated area, you can even assign what's the frequency of scanning, what makes sense. And again, the ownership for rectifications is then also simple, because everything is kind of a cohesive end-to-end environment, and the respective DevOps team can then react on the needs and calibrate accordingly. There's no prize to win for being super harmonized, because if attack strikes, then you have to react on it. It's not about having the most beautiful setup and the most harmonized ones. Sometimes it's better to have it in bits and pieces, but having the agility to react on it and incrementally rectify certain areas.